everybody, my name is Kim and welcome to my channel, Bookmarks and Breadsticks. If you're new to my channel, I bring you bookish, foodie content, focusing primarily in nonfiction like food memoirs, food history, travel and exploration, but I do tend to dabble in fiction from time to time. Today, I'm here to bring you a new book duos, focusing on memoirs from female food writers. Let's get started. So in this book duo, I wanted to bring two memoirs from the point of view of women. I really want to diversify my reading and continue to show you guys different representation within food writing. So these memoirs are both from food writers. So food writers are quite obviously different from chefs. Food writers have a very different relationship with food, but sometimes I think some of the longing or the love and passion from food, it all comes from the same place, I think, intrinsically. But again, food writers are not chefs, so there's a certain level of relatability I have with food writers more than chefs. I've taken a couple of food classes, cooking classes, I've done a culinary boot camp, but I'm not a Michelin trained chef. So when I have a book from a food writer, it's a little bit more approachable. Again, I'm not writing for Bon Appetit or anything, but I do have a booktube channel and I do love food and I'm exploring food. So I did find these a little bit more relatable. I would give each of these are actually 3-star reviews out of 5. It's not that they're bad, I find them approachable. I also want to point out that one book is the first book from a writer. The other is her most recent book. So that also might influence as I continue to read their bibliographies. Maybe my opinion of these writers will change with time. So Amy Thomas, when we start this book, is in her late 30s. She has had a love affair of food for a very long time. And they gloss over this because, like I said, this is her 3rd book. So she glosses over her time in Paris, but she has spent time in Paris and really fallen in love with food, but she isn't really quite sure how to make a career out of it, which I think a lot of us have this problem. I love food too. I work in marketing and branding for a big company, but I don't have the skill set, or at least I don't think yet, to become, someone who gets paid like Anthony Bourdain did to travel the world and just eat, which would be amazing. So I'll read the back cover for you. On an island where finding love can be just as hard as finding a dinner reservation on Friday night, Amy Thomas never imagined a family that would fit into her independent lifestyle. So when Amy finds herself turning 40, moving to Brooklyn, and making way for a baby with a new man in her life, she realizes that starting over may be her biggest opportunity yet. This book made me homesick for New York, but it also reminds me of Samantha from Sex and the City, where everyone wants to be in New York and Manhattan because it's hip and exciting, and moving to Brooklyn feels like you're moving away forever, and it's not like that at all. But what I loved is authentically Amy talks about the trade-offs in both places. If you live in Brooklyn, you have a bodega, but if you live in Manhattan, you're probably a block or two from Whole Foods and etc. There are more of the top restaurants in Manhattan, but in Brooklyn, she's able to find these places where she can go every night with her husband. That local place, that place that is yours, that is special, where you're not nearly fighting for a reservation as much. I hope my camera's okay. It just dimmed itself and now has a big temperature symbol on it, so I'm wondering if it's hot. It doesn't feel hot. All right, well, we'll carry on until it shuts itself down, I guess. I actually listened to this as an audiobook. It wasn't narrated by Amy Thomas, unfortunately, but the narrator did a really good job of, I think, feeling authentically Brooklyn without using a fake Brooklyn accent. So prior to becoming a food writer or working in the food scene, Amy worked in advertising, and I related to this a lot. She worked in some really big portfolios, some big clients, and one of them was a fashion brand, which is what took her to Paris to begin with. But as someone who works in marketing for food but longs to kind of do something else, this was a very relatable book. The audiobook comes in at 6 hours on regular speed. I don't speed up audiobooks. I can't handle it. If you can, awesome, but it drives me insane. If you want to see another video where I talk in depth about audiobooks, I'll link it in the card. What makes a good audiobook experience, what makes it a not so great audiobook experience. All in all, this is a very approachable read. I could see this easily translated into a romantic comedy. She makes her own wedding cake. She finds a great guy who's totally her opposite. And it's fun. It's very sweet. It's very charming. She's having a baby much later in life, which I think a lot of career-driven women relate to nowadays. When was this published, just for a reference point? So this book came out in 2018. By the time I was halfway through it, realized Amy Thomas had other books, and I feel like I'm giving it a 3 out of 5 because I'm missing more context that's really covered off in her other book. A lot of the struggle to find self-confidence that chefs and writers have in their early 20s, Amy's already conquered this shit. She's almost in her 40s, and she at least has a career, and she's not struggling paycheck to paycheck. And she's learning what she wants in a romance and having a child, and that's in a much different phase of her life than where I am. So I think I would have had a different experience if I had read her books in order. Now, I gave it a 3 out of 5. Doesn't mean it's bad. I'm just gonna go read Paris, My Sweet, and maybe I'll come back to it and do a review of her entire bibliography. If you guys are interested in that, just let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll make a whole video out of it. So the next book, the other book in our book duos, is A Homemade Life: Stories and Recipes from My Kitchen Table by Molly Weisenberg. She's also the author of Delancey and the creator of the food blog Orangette. So this is the cover. I got this book quite a while ago. I think I got it in February when I was traveling for work. There you go, camera. Focus for me, baby. There we go. So this, unlike Amy Thomas, this is her most recent book. This is Molly's first book, which I think makes a huge difference because she is in a different point in her life. I still give it a 3 out of 5 stars because I find that, I don't know, maybe I just didn't like her enough. It's approachable. It's a nice book. It's definitely another one that I can feel like feels very Julie and Julia, could easily have been made into a movie. This came out in 2009, and as a reference point, this came out in 2018. I want to read the review on the back of the book from NPR because I think it really sums up the book quite well. Sparkling, a coming-of-age story that somehow manages to integrate shattering grief and erotic love with recipes for rum cream pie, toffee, and meatballs. Weisenberg's recipes never feel like trite tack-ons. They're both a natural extension of her autobiography and an expression of her aesthetic, grounding this luminous memoir in the everyday and relatable. Weisenberg tells of meeting and falling in love with her future husband, ending the book with a recipe for a simple chocolate wedding cake she bakes herself. Few memoirs and chocolate cakes are more satisfying. So, fun fact, when your camera turns on a little thermometer, it's telling you the internal temperature of that said camera is too hot, and eventually it'll turn itself off as self-preservation. So, I am sorry, camera. I didn't realize that filming 3 videos in a row made you unhappy. My bad. Anyway, I was talking about A Homemade Life by Molly Weisenberg. I also listened to this as an audiobook. It was another 6-hour book, which I'm working from home. We're actually in my office right now. And if I have to do a lot of data entry or data analytics and pulling reports, I tend to turn on an audiobook because a lot of the times you're refreshing a data table. It's gotta refresh. You sit there for 10 minutes waiting for your computer to beg the internet to work with you. And it's fun. It's a good way to get through a book. And a 6-hour book, by the way, like if there's really no meetings that day, I can finish a book in a day and a half. That's probably why I got through 3 books in this week alone. So this book, Molly is oscillating between Seattle and moving a lot. And it's about her finding herself and understanding her purpose. I found this book actually especially hard to read because it's midway through the book, it's a slight spoiler, but she loses her father to cancer. And I know I've mentioned it in a couple of videos, but I have a father who is battling pancreatic cancer. So when she loses her father, I really did have to take a step away and go hide under my gravity blanket until I felt better. But I did finish the book. And I think it's important to understand how food really helps the grieving process. It was something for her to focus on, to put her energies into. And with time, when she falls in love with her later husband, Brandon, it's how differences in food can still connect people as well. I found this book approachable, but I do want to read her other books that come out later, Delancey, and she has another one that just came out this year. And I want to see how this relationship progresses because we end on a fairly happy note. She gets married and she helps make her own wedding cake, and the future looks bright and promising. And she is moving through her grief. Now there are 2 more books. I know later she is alive. She's no longer with her husband, and she will later fall in love with a woman in the 3rd book. And this is all true and factual and really does happen. So I have her other 2 books on my shelves, so I am excited to continue to read. What did I like about reading from 2 different food writers? When you write about food for a living, your prose, it's just beautiful. It's delicious. It's so much fun to read. And I find what was strong about Molly's book was the emotional connection. I could feel her heartache. I could feel the pain. I could feel how recipes don't taste the same or feel the same when they have an emotional connection, especially when that person that you love has left. Amy's book was definitely an obsession about food, and it was a little bit more lighthearted, but I would give both of them a solid 3 out of 5, but they are both different points in the writers' lives. Molly's at the beginning of her career. She's a lot younger. Amy is having a baby, and how does a baby and a family completely change your life? I liked both those books. I still recommend them both. And that ends this book duo. Let me know what you think. Would you pick up either of these books? Would you listen to them as audiobooks? Let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.